So in this video we're going to look at blocks, and we're going to look at title blocks for drawing. So we saw when we're doing a hand drawing you have to do a title block, so it's the same thing in the AutoCAD drawing and digital drawing. The title blocks are going to be used all the time. So for this one we're going to do it on the screen, we're going to draw it on the screen, but there's one thing I want to do, just mention before we do it, and that's a thing called drawing limits. So as I said, like when we were drawing lines here, you can see the coordinates on the screen, you see the coordinates down here, down towards the XY, they kind of should be close to zeros, and they kind of get bigger as you're going along. So but someone was actually asking about how can we set the drawing space to the size of an A3 or an A4 page. So what we usually do, that actually these are things we're going to look at later on today, is actually in these layouts. If you click on these are actually called paper space. So this is actually where we kind of set up the print preview of what our drawing is going to look like, and then we can open up a window into the model space. So these layouts are called paper space. That's where our print previews are, and our model space is here. But what we do in our model space, because obviously AutoCAD is infinite, almost infinite in every direction, if you're drawing something very small and you've zoomed out quite a lot, you'll just end up getting lost very easy. So one thing we can do is actually set the drawing limits. So say if you know roughly the size of the shape you're going to be drawing, say if you're going to be drawing a couple of squares and each square is maybe 100 units long, what you can actually do, just to make sure that everything is kind of where we're going to go, if you type in the word limits on your keyboard, it'll bring up. So this is actually when we set the drawing limits. So this is actually going to set us the size of the page we're going to be working on. So our limits, so specify the lower left corner, that's basically kind of your origin. So down here, so that's always going to be set 0, 0. So even though it's there already, I'll just retype it in again. 0, 0. Then our upper right corner is going to be 420 by 295. That's kind of the default. So I think that's kind of roughly supposed to be like an A4 page. So I'll just retype it in so you can see it happening. So there we go. And then if we go to our zoom extents, you'll see now our coordinates. I don't know if you saw when we were up to earlier a second ago, they were up in the thousands, but now we've actually zoomed in the extents, and our extents are actually are now the drawing limits. So we set the drawing limits to be, I think it was 420 along the x-axis and 297 up along the y-axis. So it's actually zoomed in these extents. So if you look in the coordinates down the bottom here, so our 0, 0 is more or less down here, and if you go up to the top corner here, again, it'll be slightly different depending on your kind of monitor you're using, but more or less your top right corner should be roughly around the 420 or 295, or 297, whatever it was. So again, it's just a useful way if you're drawing something that's going to be small and you don't want to get lost, you can just do it that way. So drawing limits are useful. So in this example here, we're going to be drawing a block. What we're going to do is, let's bring up the notes. Here we're going to go. We're going to draw this monitor. So this is actually like if you're doing an office plan, you might actually have a little block of a computer monitor, so you can place these in the desk. So you can just kind of plan out where desk space are going to be. So again, we're going to draw this on layer 0. So I know last week we were talking about layer 0 had special properties. So this is actually, we're going to be using blocks. So a block is actually kind of a collection of lines to make an object that we can actually save and insert. So instead of redrawing this computer every single time, we can actually save it as a block onto your computer, onto your network drive. And then if you're opening any drawing, if you can go into your blocks library and then just insert your computer. So this same thing. So usually like in structural or civil engineering technicians would have a library of kind of civil details, structural details that they can just go in, instead of redrawing it again, just go in and get one that's already been drawn and take it into drawing. So just speed things up. So to do this, you're basically going to be mostly using the line command. So for the keyboard, you could draw a rectangle. So the dimensions of the rectangle will be 125 by 431. For these internal layout where the keys are, you can just draw rectangles. These, I don't have any dimensions for these, so you can just kind of use your eye, just kind of judge them so they're roughly this size, so it doesn't actually make a difference. We're not going to worry about the details here. So just, you have your rectangle for your outer dimensions, and for these ones just draw them in until they look good. And for this one again, this is for the monitor, that's like another rectangle, you know, the dimensions. For this one here, it's probably going to be using the arc command. I'm not sure if we've actually done it, but you can kind of figure it out. So it's up at the top here. And then for this line here, I suppose what you could do is from the center of the arc, just go up. Do I have a distance for that one? No, we don't. So okay, you can judge that by eye as well. So kind of just go up a certain distance, whatever you want. So it just looks about right. And then to get that distance kind of evenly spread out, it's 172. So you can go divide that by 2 and go that way, and then just bring the lines down until it's touching the monitor. And again, for this one, you can just draw a rectangle, and then you can use the fillet command. So the radius is 23, so you can just use the fillet command that's kind of around the edges on that. So I'm going to click on the rectangle option. So I'm going to go here. So we're going to draw the keyboard first of all. So it doesn't matter where we're going to be. So specify your starting point. I'm going to press D to bring up the dimensions. So the length of a rectangle is 431, and the height is going to be, or as they call it the width, but it's going to be 125 here. So there we have our keyboard. And then I'm going to bring up a rectangle again. I'm going to draw the internal parts where the keys are housed. Again, these are just kind of freehand drawn, so just trying to draw it roughly where you want. Now, a quick way, if you're using the same command over and over again, instead of kind of drawing a rectangle, going up, click the rectangle, draw another one, and then go back up to click it again, what you can do, if you press spacebar, that'll actually bring up the last command you were using. So it's just a handy way to speed things up a little bit. So I'm going to use our object tracking. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the rectangle and use my object tracking just to align them up. And again, this is all kind of freehand to a certain degree, so don't worry about the dimensions. And yeah, use our object tracker just to line it up. Make sure you don't, if I go down too low, it'll snap onto the nearest line down the bottom, so just make sure you're just above it. So there we go. So now to draw the monitor, it's another rectangle, so it's 485 by 28. So I'll just use this here. So dimensions 485 28. Okay, so I need to just move this a little bit, and just for make it look nice, I want to actually center the monitor, which we should do. So I have my object snap here for center line, so that's a little triangle. So if I matched up to the center line of the keyboard, hover over it, and I'll just go up a little bit. There we go, that's kind of centered the keyboard and the monitor over each other. Actually probably need to move it a bit, so I'm just going to select it, bring up the move command and lift it up a bit further away, just so we can actually get the base of the monitor drawn. For the arc center end, but I'm actually going to use the 3-point one. So in order to get 3-point, we have our 2-point, we have the one, we have the start and the end where we need kind of the center point. So we know the center point is it's 27 units long. So if I just bring up the line command and draw a line kind of from the midpoint 27 units up. So now we have our center point for our arc. So start, so I use our 3-point. So I click there, that's point 1, point 2, and point 3. There we go. And we don't need this line anymore, so we'll say good luck. Next thing we're going to do is we'll draw the base. So again, so it's what? We don't have actually any particular dimension for how deep it is, so we'll just kind of go by eye. It's somewhere like that. And it's 172 units each way. So 172 divided by 2 is 86. So I'm just going to draw a line from this point, 86 units that way, and then draw another line, 86 units this way. You could have used the extend command or whatever you wanted, but for this one we'll just go this, and then I'm going to draw a line, just kind of bring it down. So actually if we can do this, we can actually do it this way, so we can actually use a trim command. So we'll draw the base of it, and it doesn't actually say how far we're going to go down beyond it, so we'll just go down to roughly about here, and then we're going to go 172 this way, and then back up here. So now we need a bit of house cleaning. So we don't need this anymore, so we'll just delete that one. And first of all, we'll use the fillet command, so let's get our rounded corner. So click on the fillet command. It's asking for us to select our first object, so we need to set the radius first of all. So let's click on the radius. By default it's set to 0, so the radius for this is going to be 23. So type in 23, and now we can select our objects, click our lines there and there, spacebar just to bring the line up, the last command up again, and there we go. So now we need to trim all that, so just click on the trim command. Nice easy way to do the trim in some cases is, so use the green selection command, so just bring it down across everywhere, hit enter, and then you can just bring the mouse over the line you want to get rid of and escape. There we have our nice little monitor. I didn't draw a mouse. No, I didn't. Okay, so this is our computer screen here and the keyboard. So now we're actually going to use the block command. Again, this is actually to turn it into an object which can be used again and again in subsequent drawings. So again, this is a step-by-step guide or in the notes, so if you're not sure about what I'm talking about here, just open up the notes. There should be a Word document on Brightspace you can follow. So I'll just delete this because we don't need it. It's cluttering up the place. So to start the block command, you can either just type in B on the keyboard, or there's actually, I think the icon is up here somewhere, but I usually just use the keyboard shortcut. So you can either type in the word block, or even quicker just B, because it's just a very common object, so it's kind of just using a quick keyboard shortcut is nice and easy to use. So you should get this little screen showing up. So this is actually where we're going to put in our block information. So we're going to call it, unsurprisingly, we could call it computer. On the base point, so the base point is just where we're actually going to specify when we insert the block into a drawing where we're going to be controlling it from. So where we're going to go, we will then pick the bottom left corner of the keyboard. So we'll just use the pick point, and I'm going to pick the bottom left corner. And then our objects, so we're going to select the objects on screen. So it's going to reverse out, going to use our green selection tool. So basically click the left mouse button only once, then let go, and then use the square rectangle to select everything. Now it should go all blue highlight like that, and then hit enter to confirm we've selected everything. And then for this stuff, we can leave the behavior. I don't think I really use that one. It's kind of just the only thing just make sure you allow exploding. So when we put this all together, all these individual lines are going to become one solid object. And by clicking this allow explode means that if you want to go in and edit it, we can actually explode it, which means to actually undo the block and just make it back into a series of lines. So we'll just click OK. Make sure open and block, so just make sure I've done everything. Millimeters is good. Okay, I think we're good. So click OK. So now we have to create a block. So when we hover over it now, you'll see we're actually, the whole thing is one solid object. So instead of being a selection of lines, it's actually one solid thing. So, and we can actually control it from this bottom left hand corner. So see if we can kind of move it there. So now we're actually moving it all in one go. So what we'll go into a bit more detail maybe next time you do AutoCAD, and I think you do it next year actually, AutoCAD. We'll do more blocks, but we'll save this to, once you actually have your own, hopefully we're back in the building, then we can save this to a library on your school student account, and then you can put all your blocks in there, and then you'll be able to go back and forth and find the blocks that you actually need. But that's the basic, how you actually set up a block and drawing it and just put in the information. So all you have to do is basically bring up the block command, put in the information, set the point where you're going to move the block from, select the object, so it's all the lines, and then that's it really. You can actually put in extra information, so usually like in a big building you could put in the things like serial numbers and the make of the computer, so when someone clicks on a block all that extra information will actually come up. So again, it helps identify stuff for quantity surveyors and different things it is, so very, very useful thing. And remember, we drew this block on a 0 layer, but if we usually in a drawing, then we'd actually insert it as on its own layer, so there will be its own layer for computers. So I'm actually using the same drawing file from the clock we did last week, so it's going to open up, or last video, so it's going to open up the layer properties, breaking up a new layer, call it computer. I'll make it stand out a bit, I'll make it red. So there we go, and I'll just bring that up, make it active, if we close it down. So now if we have our block and we want to just delete it, now the block would normally be saved on your computer somewhere, but because we just drew it here, it should be active within our drawing now. So on the home, in our tab, you see a little block guy here. So if you click on insert and see, because our block is actually saved within, we had our saved a second ago, if you click on the computer icon, it'll bring it in, but you notice that it's actually red because we're inserting a block, but we're actually on the computer layer. It's going to be drawn, it's going to come in on the computing layer. So if I had actually had the blue big circle, and when I brought the computer in, it would actually be on that layer. So that's one of the things, when you draw a block on a 0 layer, and then you turn it into a block, and then when you insert it into a drawing, you select the layer that you want it to be. So again, if you're drawing doors, all the doors would be drawn originally on a 0 layer and then inserted on a layer called doors. Same for windows, for example, and same for computers. So it's just whatever layer you insert it on, it'll adopt the properties of that layer. So it's quite handy. So that's basically blocks. And the next thing we're going to look at is a title block and a drawing border. So that'll be the next video. I'll just keep that separate. So I'll see you in the next video.